Uy. Welcome in, welcome in. Hello from San Francisco. What's going on? Welcome in. Good to see you. Hello, people who just came in. Let us know if you've come from San Francisco, if you've been to San Francisco, because that's where we're at. Hello. Hi, Evelyn. What's going on? Happy Sunday. Happy autumn. Welcome to San Francisco. We're in San Francisco, over at a park, one of the oldest parks in San Francisco, actually. It was built, I think, in the late 1800s. It's called South Park. Not the South Park that you guys think of from Comedy Central, but South Park in San Francisco. It's also, the street is also known as Soma Filipinas. Yeah, Evelyn. Are you from here in San Francisco? Oops. Let's not look at the kiddos. Let's not look at the kiddos. Evelyn's coming in from Missouri. We were just in St. Louis last week, actually. Last week in St. Louis. No, 2 weeks ago. We were in St. Louis. Went to a Cardinals game. Tried to stay out of the heat and humidity as much as possible. I love that. Such a nice day. We know that it's about to rain. It's gonna rain. Enrico, hello, my friend. Welcome in. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hello, hello. Oh boy, they're getting upset at each other over there. Goodness gracious. Enrico, good to see you. We're just hanging out at the park, enjoying the last bit of dry weather before the rain comes this week. So it's supposed to rain tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thanks so much for liking the live, everyone. I appreciate you. Jessica, great to see you. Happy Sunday, everyone. Oh boy. Oh, look, this cute little puppy. Look at this cute little puppy. Just hanging out. Jackie, great to see you. Well, welcome in. We are in South Park in San Francisco, also known as Soma Filipinas. This is one of the oldest parks in San Francisco. They built it, in the late 1800s. And before all the buildings, you could look over, I think it was either to the left or, no, to the right. You could look over to the right, and instead of buildings, you would be able to see the water. You could see views of the bay. Jackie, good to see you. So let's see. I'm Jackie. So this is in South Park, San Francisco, California. South Park was created by British immigrant George Gordon when he came out here to San Francisco. Gordon was like a lumber dealer and began to build wharves. And so he established one of San Francisco's first iron foundries, which was kind of neat, and built California's first successful sugar refinery. And so Gordon designed this park, so South Park, into 4 sections according to the English crescent formation. So if you guys look at South Park from the top, it's like a crescent formation. The area was intended exclusively for private dwellings, and along with Rincon Hill, was one of San Francisco's most elite areas. And so Gordon chose this area a mile south of the business district because it was relatively flat and it didn't really have any of the sand dunes. And he began purchasing lots in 1852 with the intent of creating an elegant residential area on the plan of one of London's stylish squares or crescents. And then back then in those days, San Francisco was a little like rough around the edges. There was a lot of gambling. There was a lot of a lot of stuff happening, a lot of stuff happening in those days. And so what Gordon's idea was is this area would be free of saloons, gambling halls, stores, and warehouses, all noisy and undesirable intrusions. And so noted British architect George Goddard was selected for the job. And then construction began in 1854. Oh, look, there's a Waymo. There's a Waymo, y'all. With the first quarter completed by the end of that year. So the houses were made out of brick. I think there's one right over here. Let's look. Let's move this out of the way. So this house right over here. So that's an example of one of the brick houses right over there. And so the houses were of brick covered in stucco to look like stone. Most of the two stories for the parlors, most had 2 stories. That's what I meant to say. Most had 2 stories for the parlors and 5 bedrooms with a large English-style basement below for the kitchen, dining room, pantries, and servant quarters. The stables and coachman's quarters were in a separate building in the rear. A main feature of the development was a large oval private garden in the center, which is kind of what we're looking at right now. So 550 feet by 75 square feet, elaborately landscaped with hundreds of young trees and shrubs. So all of these trees, let's see if we can find an old school tree. I think we might be sitting next to one of the old school trees. Right there. Old school trees right over there. All right. You can see Salesforce Tower in the back. So all these trees and shrubs, it was accented with colorful flowers, and it was all enclosed by an ornamental iron fence, which is long gone. Advertisements of the time, I know, it's really neat, show that Goddard sold unbuilt lots as well as partially and fully completed houses. So sales slowed down around the Depression, as you can imagine. Diminishing returns from the gold fields, and Gordon never did make, large profits like he initially expected. But nevertheless, wealthy and prominent San Franciscans continued to move to South Park throughout the 1850s and 1860s, making it home to the city's powerful elite. So we had business owners, company presidents, politicians, high society, and they all enjoyed the attractive neighborly community. They were removed from the noisy and fire-prone downtown. Regular transport service on a horse-drawn omnibus, along with the convenience of line stores nearby on 3rd Street, added to its appeal. This neighborhood, however, became surrounded by industrial buildings and lost its upper-class character as warehouses and hospitals blocked the prized view. So if you look down over to the right, all you can see right now are trees, but if we walk more towards the center, you can see that there are buildings over there. And before there were buildings, you could see all the way out to the bay, which was really neat. So the cut made by the creation of 2nd Street in 1868 was another major factor in reducing land values. By the 1870s, the well-to-do had abandoned South Park and then moved up to Nob Hill, where access was limited and the views were spectacular. And we've done lots of lives from Nob Hill. Um, so as the wealthy and middle classes left South Park, working class people began to move in to live closer to the shipping docks and warehouses where they worked. Japanese immigrants in the late 1800s also settled in this particular area. Rebuilding after the earthquake and fire in 1906 definitively sealed its future as working class neighborhood. Other communities who lived in this neighborhood were the Japanese, Greeks, and the Irish, many of whom were displaced after the 1906 earthquake and fire. African Americans also lived in the area during the 1950s and 60s after coming to find work in San Francisco during World War II. Most African Americans were renters and were forced out in the 1980s when South Park started to become a trendy, artsy neighborhood. South Park has since become, once again, a chic neighborhood for middle and upper class San Franciscans, often referred to as the heart of Multimedia Gulch. Another fun fact is right over here to the left is the original first headquarters of Twitter. So if you look right here, this right here, that red building used to be gray, and that used to be where that was Twitter's first headquarters. Jackie, thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you have an amazing day. Thanks so much for listening in on our little history podcast. Just giving a little history about South Park. South Park here in San Francisco. Let's see. What else did I miss about South Park? So, let's see. Do. Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's see. So South Park, I think we already talked about it, was established in the 1850s and was ravaged by the fire following the 1906 earthquake. The 1 acre park, surrounded by 2nd, 3rd, Bryant, and Brannan Streets, were reborn during the tech boom of the late 1990s, and most recently underwent a complete renovation in 2017. The Little Oval Park and the neighborhood that surrounds it has seen a lot of change. From hosting nightly bonfires for out-of-work longshoremen in the 1930s to today's iteration as a flora-strewn space ideal for dog walking and calming strolls. Oh, that's right. The bonfires used to be out here, y'all, the bonfires. So, as the city's oldest park, South Park has a rich and thrilling past, which includes playing host to the inception of the world's most addictive social media platform and setting the stage for an Oscar-winning performance. So in 1852, British sugar and iron magnate George Gordon purchased the lots surrounding the block and laid out a plan modeled after the squares of London. Mega mansions of the city's ultra elite surrounded the park, which was only accessible to residents with a key. A Dutch windmill sat in the middle of the park, pumping water for area residents. The pamphlet Gordon published in 1854 described the plans. The Prospectus of South Park, noting his intention to lay out ornamental grounds and building lots on the plan of the London squares, ovals or crescents, or of St. John's Park or Union Square in New York City, and equally elegant. From 1854 to 1869, the Tony days of South Park, when it was a fashionable neighborhood for the rich and famous. In 1869, following the 2nd Street cut, wherein the incline on 2nd Street was leveled flat to allow easier access for pedestrians and a less taxing route for horses. The area became more reachable for the working class. With the influx of a new socioeconomic group, the park's cachet faded among the city's finicky wealthy. In 1897, San Francisco bought the site and established it as a public park. After 45 years, South Park was no longer under lock and key. In 1906, now firmly established as a working class area, the neighborhood saw its brick townhouses obliterated following the 1906 earthquake and fire. The Oval Park, unaffected by the tremor, turned into a refugee camp. Trees in the park are cut down to make space for the camp. The neighborhood was later rebuilt as warehouses and light manufacturing, nightclubs, and hotels. In 1906 to 1930s, South Park becomes popular with Japanese immigrants who operate 4 residential hotels in the small neighborhood. The Emoto Hotel at 22 to 24 South Park Street, the Kumamoto Hotel, it's no longer existent, the Bo Chow Hotel at 102 South Park Street, and the Hotel Omiya at 104, 106 South Park Street. In 1921, Filipino merchant marines purchased the 3-story building at 104 to 106 South Park, which I believe is down that way. So we're looking that same direction. So the group christened the building the Grand Orient Filipino Hotel in honor of their fraternity in the Philippines. The building and its Grand Orient Filipino Hotel signage on the front gate can still be seen today. Oh, so it must be down there. We'll have to take a look. We'll have to go down there and see. Okay, so the 1930s, the park became a meeting spot for immigrants and longshoremen to hear word about possible work from the nearby Sailors Union Hall. As one of the neighborhood parks council recalls, to warm themselves while waiting for calls from Union Hall, they built a bonfire in the middle of the park. It burned for nearly 40 years, furthering the park's decline into a dangerous slum abandoned by city planners. It was fed with construction refuse, neighborhood garbage, and junk, and the park became a gathering place for certain types. The city provided them with wood so that they wouldn't demolish historic buildings for fuel. The 1970s, due to low rent, architects, artists, designers, and photographers moved in and helped turn the park around by forming an association. In the 1980s, the park turned into a mixed-use residential and commercial area with restaurants, businesses, and retail shops. In 1990s, the first .com explosion ignites the city, taking the South Park neighborhood with it. During this time, South Park became the cultural hub of San Francisco's trendy, interactive media district. In 2004, Rent So Rent in 2004 was filmed in San Francisco using South Park for exterior shots. The park was briefly covered with fake snow and early 90s cars to complete its transformation into a New York City neighborhood. In 2006, South Park, now made up of 2 large lawns surrounding a small sand pit at a 1970s era wood playground, is where Jack Dorsey first mentioned the idea of Twitter to Biz Stone, one of 4 other co-founders of the social media titan. On that playground right up there is where this playground over here is where they first brought up the idea. And then Twitter opened its first office at 164 South Park. In a space where the only sources of natural light were the 2 skylights and small block glass windows. It's now the office of venture capital fund Innovates. Twitter opened a larger office nearby at 539 Bryant Street, 1 block away from South Park. In 2007, 2013, arguably more important, in 2012, Blue Jasmine, starring Cate Blanchett, films in San Francisco. Her character's finale, wherein she has a mental snap following a series of unfortunate events, takes place on a bench in the park. Behind her, you can see the storefront of South Park Cafe, one of the park's most popular restaurants. Blanchett would go on to win the Academy Award for Best Actress for her stellar performance. So right here at Cafe Centro, that is the cafe that was featured in Blue Jasmine. So in 2020 of March, South Park Cafe, the park restaurant behind the corporate card startup Brex, shuts down after Brex employees shuts down because of the Ronas. But now, if you look at this park, it's a quiet little cove. Let's go for a little bit of a walk. Let's do a little looky-loo. We'll go look for the Grand Orient. Zoom out just a little bit. So 104 South Park. Right over there is the old Twitter headquarters. That guy right there. And let's go look for the Grand Orient. Okay, let's go walking. Oh my gosh. So let's actually start around the 1800s. Okay, so we'll start here because it started in 1854. Here's some of the old photos. So let's see. 1854 to 1860s, British entrepreneur George Gordon creates South Park as an elegant planned community surrounding a gated private garden and one of San Francisco's oldest parks. South Park is home to the city's social and economic elite. Then, in the 1870s, industrial buildings and warehouses are built nearby, changing the character of the neighborhood. Japanese, Irish, and Greek immigrants moved to the neighborhood in order to be closer to the docks. And then 1897, South Park Garden becomes a public park, and eucalyptus trees replace the former plantings. Here's some older shots. In 1906, like we mentioned, the 1906 earthquake and fire destroyed the neighborhood, and South Park serves as a refugee camp, temporarily housing 648 people. The neighborhood is then rebuilt with a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential buildings. And then in 1906 and 1933, Japanese immigrants operate hotels at 22 to 24, 102 to 104 South Park Street. And then the Filipino Merchant Marines purchase 104 to 106 South Park Street and rename it Grand Orient Filipino Hotel, which we'll go and look in just a second. Longshoremen create a bonfire in the park to warm themselves as they wait for calls from the Union Hall, which we talked about the bonfires. And then South Park was originally constructed in 1855 as an English picturesque strolling park. So at the center of the new residential community, in the years following the 1906 earthquake and fire, the park, oh yeah, we already read that. So it served as a refugee camp, providing temporary housing for 648 people. As the neighborhood rebuilt throughout the early 20th century, bonfires burned in the park as longshoremen kept warm, waiting for calls from the Union Hall. Towards the end of the 20th century, the park evolved quickly, reinventing itself to meet the needs of a quickly changing population. First families, then elderly, and those living with disabilities, moving into residential hotels, and finally young professionals during the dot-com era. Here's some of the old photos, which are so cool to see. More old photos right up there. Okay, let's go look for, first of all, let's go get another charger. So that's 70, there's 84. Okay, so wait a minute, 104 needs to be down here. There's 130. Did it just skip? Okay, let's go find it. Let's go find it, y'all. Ooh, wind. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. This is it. Oh, here it is. Grand Orient. Here it is. Found it. Two seconds, y'all. Hold on. There we go. Better. All right. I wonder if they have a landmark on here. Nope. No landmark. Okay, so let's go down to 164. Look at the sky, y'all. So here's the old Twitter headquarters.
I mean, I get you, Brandon. You're like, oh, the bar is so low value.
Yeah, bro, you both seem to think that, oh, he has a pulse. Like, time to go. Speaking of validation,
Hi, Wilson. We are in South Park in San Francisco, the oldest park in San Francisco. So this is like a 1 acre public park located in the South End Historic District in San Francisco. It was conceived in 1850s by an English-born sugar and iron magnate, George Gordon. And the park was designed in this sort of picturesque tradition of John Nash's Park Crescent in London. Flat and free of sand, the site was selected to serve as a centerpiece for an exclusive residential development of the same name. It's the first planned. Is that the one with the Joseph Conrad spot? Oh, which one is that one? Is that it? Let's see. Oh no, you're thinking of you're thinking of that one over in North Beach, the one in North Beach. So right across from, what is it, St. Peter's and Paul's Church, there's a little triangle park right across from the street, right across the street from the St. Peter and Paul's Church. Yes, that's exactly right. That's the one. That's the one. I like South Park because it's kind of tucked away and it's quiet. It's mostly like neighbors or community members walking their dogs. And it's really, really quiet park. Actually, right down here, let's turn the camera just a little bit. So if you see this orange building on the other side of the park, on the other side of that swing, that is the original location of Twitter. That's the original headquarters right over there. Original headquarters. I kind of like that view, actually. Let's do that. Let's look over there because that view has a nice view of the clouds and the sun. There's just, I like the cloud, but I don't want the kids in the frame. Okay. Let me know. Can you guys see the kids? Let's turn it just a little bit. All right, there you go. That's better. That's better. So South Park has had continuous history, more so than other parts in San Francisco. So you've got homes from the Gold Rush business class to post-1906 earthquake neighborhood for waves of newcomers from Japan, the Philippines, and the American South. Actually, not only this is where the longshoremen would come from, but if you guys remember the I Hotel over in Chinatown, when they got rid of that hotel, a lot of the residents from those hotels, many of them were Filipinos, were relocated to this area of San Francisco. And then right over there, if you look, right over there, that dark building is the Grand Oriente Filipino Hotel. So in 1921, a group of Filipino immigrants employed as seamen and merchant marines purchased a 3-story house in South Park and named it the Grand Oriente Filipino Hotel, which is right over there. It's the gray one, so right next to the yellow building, right next to, right in between the two cafes. So it was named in honor of a fraternity in the Philippines. The house served as a 24-room hotel and meeting place for the Filipino community that worked in San Francisco and nearby Central Valley. The owners went on to purchase an apartment building and a lodge in the same area. South Park still serves as a home for this small Filipino community. So the hotel continues to offer very low-income housing to its elderly Filipino residents, and the apartment building still provides a stable home for families, many of whom have lived in the area for 20 years. Many of the Filipino residents of the hotel are elderly men who served under the U.S. flag during World War II. Unfortunately, these men are not recognized by the federal government as veterans or denied their rightfully earned benefits. The Recession Act of 1946 virtually nullified the service of 120,000 soldiers who were drafted from the Philippines, as well as more than 300,000 soldiers who joined the war effort on the American side after 1942. Although past efforts to secure benefits for these veterans have failed, a new hope is offered by U.S. Representative Bob Filner out of Chula Vista. And Filner introduced a Filipino Veterans Equity Bill that would restore medical care and pension and burial rights or benefits to surviving Filipino veterans. So then, the Filipino fraternity's property in South Park began with a $6,000 investment, and now it's worth over $2 million. Despite the incredible profit that can be made off this property, the fraternity does not want to sell it because they want to maintain the safe enclave that the Filipino community has made for itself in South Park. So when the Filipinos weren't allowed to buy property directly, a couple dozen men joined the Freemasons and formed their own chapter. And then as such, they were able to buy a property and maintain their Masonic calls after all these years. So really cool, really neat history here in South Park. What's happening over there? Do you guys hear that? So yeah. So again, South Park is one of the oldest neighborhoods in all of San Francisco. It's hidden away off bustling 3rd Street, just a block and a half from AT&T Park and the Embarcadero. This unexpected little gem and little green oval was created in 1854 by a British immigrant named George Gordon, who laid out the city's first exclusive residential quarter around a private park. Emulating upper crust British spaces such as Berkeley Square, South Park was the swankiest area in town during the 1850s and the 1860s, but it declined and sank into poverty and squalor for almost a century before being reborn during the dot-com era as a high-priced tech and venture capital enclave. There are many fascinating stories hidden behind the walls of the buildings that front the 550-foot-long oval, but none more remarkable than the saga of the nondescript 3-story rooming house on the northwest side of the park, which you guys can see right next to that yellow building. For decades, this building was the Grand Orient Filipino Hotel. It was a vital center for the Filipino life in San Francisco, and the first and most important Filipino Masonic Lodge in the United States. So the story begins 102 years ago. 102 years ago in 1921, when a group of 40 Filipino U.S. merchant marines decided to start a Masonic Lodge in San Francisco. These sailors were part of the great wave of Filipino immigration to the U.S. mainland that started in 1920. So like Chinese and Japanese, Filipinos were subjected to racial discrimination, including racial covenants, and forced to live in undesirable areas. Most Filipinos in San Francisco lived in Manila Town, which was centered on Kearny Street near Chinatown. But a number of them also lived in South Park, which became a really rundown neighborhood that was also home to an early Japantown. During the 1920s and 1930s, these Filipino enclaves comprised several thousand immigrants living seasonally in about 40 residential hotels. Forced to take menial jobs regardless of their education or training, most Filipinos worked seasonally as farm workers in the canneries or as domestic servants, busboys, dishwashers, or janitors. Others joined the U.S. Navy or the Merchant Marine, and as a result of strict immigration laws, the vast majority were single men. Lacking families and social networks, they joined Masonic lodges for mutual support. One of the earliest and most important of these fraternal organizations was called the Grand Orient Filipino, whose Grand Lodge was in Manila. Masonry had become popular in the Philippines because Andres Bonifacio, a leader in the struggle for Filipino independence against Spain, was a Mason who used secret Masonic rituals and recruitment techniques with his revolutionary group. At their peak, the three main Filipino Masonic and quasi-Masonic fraternal organizations in the United States numbered about 3,000 members, with more in the Philippines. The San Francisco Grand Orient chapter was originally connected to the Grand Orient Lodge in Manila, paying $9 in dues to the international organization. About 20 Grand Orient Lodges were founded in 5 California cities and 5 states, including Hawaii, Washington, Arizona, New York, and New Jersey, and its peak had about 700 members. So the first street address for the Grand Orient Filipino Lodge appears in the city directory in 1934 at 1524 Powell Street, 3 blocks west of Manila Town. The building now houses the American Legion, post 384. So the next year, the organization moved to South Park and began leasing a 3-story room house at 104 to 106 South Park. So that's the building that's right over there. This building had formerly housed the Japanese-run Omaya Hotel, one of more than half a dozen Japanese-owned hotels and rooming houses on the north side of the park. The Grand Orient began renting out the building's 24 SRO-style rooms. They had no kitchens and communal bathrooms at low rates to Filipinos. It and other residential hotels allowed seasonal and transient workers to keep their rooms while working in the fields or at sea, store their belongings, and keep their money with hotel managers. Residential hotels in the Tenderloin and in the so-called Hobohemia around 4th and Howard fulfilled the same function for whites and other ethnic groups. In 1948, the Grand Orient Filipino organization purchased the building at 104-106 South Park in 1951. It constructed a new temple across the park on Jack London, or just across the park on what is now Jack London Alley. The Moorish-style temple inscribed at the top of the words, "Dedicated to the Supreme Architect of the Universe," still stands and is used as a meeting site for the last remaining Grand Masonic in California, Grizzle number 12. Welcome back. We're just telling a little bit of a history lesson about the Grand Orient Filipino hotel that's over there. So the fraternity provided not only low-cost housing to its members, but also social and educational activities. It's Masonic values. I love that you love San Francisco. Required that members be recommended by another member. In Voices, a Filipino-American oral history, a former member recalled the Grand Orient Filipino had been helping members at home and abroad. Our duty is to help one another, not just members of the order, but other Filipinos and other races who need help. So this hotel played an important role in the Filipino community for decades. But with the passage of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which ended national quotas, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968, Filipinos moved out of Manilatown and South Park and into places like Daly City, the Pinoy capital of the world. The end of Manilatown's half-century-long existence came in 1977, when the last Filipino tenants of the International Hotel on Kearny Street were forcibly evicted after a long and bitter struggle that galvanized Bay Area Asian American and housing rights activists. By the 1990s, the members of the Grand Orient were aging and their numbers dwindling. By 2018, there were the members of the Grand Orient were aging and the numbers started to dwindle. Oh, that's amazing. Wilson, that's really cool. So by 2018, there were only 5 residents still living in the hotel. The owners decided to sell, but they wanted to ensure that the building would continue to house needy residents. Then Supervisor Jane Kim introduced the owners to an affordable housing nonprofit, Mission Housing Development Corporation, which bought the building for $4.5 million, along with 2 other SROs on South Park. With the aid of city funds, all 3 have been completely renovated and are fully leased to formerly homeless and very low-income residents. For more than 80 years, the Grand Orient Filipino was a vital part of San Francisco's Filipino community. That era has gone, but what has now become a glittering oasis of the 21st century, wealth and power, the Grand Orient's continued role as a haven for society's least fortunate ensures that the lodge's universal humanitarian values will continue to have a home on South Park. So that's the history of the Grand Orient Filipino. And thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate everyone coming in for the history lesson. Welcome to San Francisco. Make sure you like and subscribe for more fun facts about San Francisco and a little history lesson along the way. I appreciate each and every one of y'all for tuning in. And let's get one last view of the park before we head out. We'll do a little slow-mo. Let me just try to get my tripod up and running. Hold on. Do that. Let's get this little strap. Okay, I think we're all set now. Okay, last little pano of South Park. Pretty. Oh, and that building right there, again, 164 South Park is the original location of the Twitter headquarters. It's where Twitter became more than just a thought. Okay, y'all. Well, thanks again. I will see you next time. Like and subscribe for more fun facts about San Francisco. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.